Welcome, everyone, to Nerd of the Rings. We're going to jump right into it because today is a huge news day, guys. This is huge. This is... the only thing I can think comparable is when it was announced that Amazon was going to make some kind of Middle-earth show, back before we knew anything about it. This is big, guys. Be sure to hit that like for me, folks. We got over 1,200 people here jazzed to hear more and to talk about this news. Please hit the like. More Lord of the Rings movies in works as Warner Brothers and New Line strike rights deal. So for those of you who have been following the news, the rights for films have been very up in the air. It seems like, Warner Brothers and Middle-earth Enterprises, that's owned by Embracer now, they couldn't agree on whether Warner Brothers had the rights to make more films. We knew that War of the Rohirrim was in... Finn Trago starts off with Alfred origin movie super chat just to troll me. Get out of here. Come on. Thank you for the super chat, though, Finn Trago. All right. So it's been up in the air. Warner Brothers thinking they still had rights to make movies. Middle-earth Enterprises saying, no, we're not sure about that. And none of that matters at this point because they've just struck a deal. So Warner Brothers will be making more Middle-earth films beyond War of the Rohirrim. That is the huge takeaway. So I'm going to read a couple key moments out of this article that tells us about the rights acquisition. So here's a big one. This is from the CEO of Embracer Group. We understand how cherished these works are, and working together with our partners at New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers Pictures, we plan to honor the past, look to the future, and adhere to the strongest level of quality and production values. That's always nice to hear. That's good. Okay. Now, a big question. I've seen a lot of people posting on Twitter and stuff thinking that they're making like a remaking Lord of the Rings. It is very clear that they are not doing that. Here is a quote from... This looks like from Warner Brothers. They're talking about the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films. But for all the scope and detail lovingly packed into the two trilogies, the vast, complex, and dazzling universe dreamed up by J.R.R. Tolkien remains largely unexplored on film. The opportunity to invite fans deeper into the cinematic world of Middle-earth is an honor, and we are excited to partner with Middle-earth Enterprises and Embracer on this adventure. So this is not... They're talking about going... They're talking about going deeper into the cinematic world. So they are not remaking Lord of the Rings. We're getting new stories. So, and then it goes on a little bit to talk about how Amazon got the rights for TV, for streaming the TV show Rings of Power. We know about that. And now we get to wildly speculate on what this could mean. What stories could we get here? So if you're wondering, so these rights are actually very similar. From my understanding, they are very similar to what Amazon has for their TV side of things. They've got the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, and the appendices of the Lord of the Rings. The only snag here is, if you remember when the Hobbit trilogy came out, it was a big deal because MGM had to be looped in order, because they had distribution rights to the Hobbit. And I believe someone can correct me in the chat if I am wrong, but I think that Amazon now owns MGM. So I don't know if that negates any possibility of like a Hobbit remake down the road. It might. Jess, thanks for the super chat. This is so unreal, and I'm absolutely excited. I am pumped, guys. I am always going to go into new projects with hope and excitement because at the end of the day, the only way we get great Middle Earth adaptations is if adaptations are happening. Like, yeah, I've seen plenty of folks saying this could be awful. Yeah, it could. Like, they could release some movies and they could be awful, but they could not be. Think back to before Peter Jackson made his films. The same was true then. They could have been terrible, but they weren't. If you get the right team together and you tell a compelling, great story, you're working from Tolkien. You've got a good foundation. Who knows? I'm gonna hope for the best. Katharina, thanks for the super chat. Here's hoping Tom Bombadil and Glorfindel and others I've probably forgotten receive a formal apology. Just kidding. Well, if you're looking at the results of our poll, the Angmar War got 40% of the vote. It's a pretty good percentage. And yes, I'm being told by my mods, I am correct. Amazon did acquire MGM. So I'd be curious if there's some, rights issues at play that would prevent any Hobbit adaptations happening. Depends on how much they want to play ball with each other, which might not be very much. They're in direct competition now, essentially. I think that competition could be really healthy. I think that we fans could end up winning in this whole thing because what I've said all along is, if Amazon had gotten the rights to the films, then it's all under one roof, so to speak. So, if like whether you like Rings of Power or not, there's only one player in the game. Whereas now you've got Warner Brothers and Amazon both making Middle Earth stuff, competing to make the best stuff, competing for Middle Earth fans' attention. And so, if say this is a hypothetical, I don't know what's going to happen. Say Rings of Power season 2 falters, doesn't do a good job, and then Warner Brothers comes in and says, "Here's War of the Rohirrim," and it's really good. And then they pull out something else. They say, we're going to start an Angmar War duology or trilogy, whatever. And it knocks it out of the park. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Amazon to up their game. And same vice versa. If Rings of Power season 2 comes out and it's just amazing, and Warner Brothers comes out with something lackluster, it's going to put a lot of pressure on them. It's like, imagine if, okay, so this is a ludicrous scenario, but imagine if like Star Wars. So like if George Lucas had only sold the film rights to Star Wars and kept like the TV rights or something. Like I said, it's wacky, but this is kind of similar to what's happening here. So this is the first example I could think of. So say George Lucas sells film rights to Disney, but keeps streaming rights. And then the sequel trilogy comes out. And it's very divisive, obviously. A lot of people not happy with it. I wasn't happy with it. And then George Lucas comes out and has some other TV show that's like, say he comes out with Mandalorian right after the sequel trilogy. Don't you think that would put pressure then on Disney? Absolutely. Tenzin, thanks for the super chat. Can you repeat what they announced? So the announcement, ladies and gentlemen, is that Warner Brothers and New Line have reached a deal with Embracer Group, who now owns Middle Earth Enterprises. and they will be making new films set in Middle Earth. So it is. I've heard people say the Tolkien cinematic universe. I'm not a huge fan of the term cinematic universe, but could call it the Middle Earth cinematic universe. MECU. Me see you. Shout out to my group text that came up with me see you. Sauron's shout out to Anna Maria, who says that's the Sauron's slightly less famous quote. Me see you. Old Turtle Den, hey, massive W. Yeah, I am pumped about this, guys. I like this. MBT, thanks for the super chat. The new films better have a soundtrack as ballin' as the 1977 Hobbit film or Lord of the Rings trilogy. Oh man, could you imagine? Oh my gosh, they could get Howard Shore back for these guys. We could get more Howard Shore Middle Earth. Who's gonna say no to that, right? All right. Okay, so Jared brings up a great point. He touring in the Dragon Helm of Dorloman. I'm glad you mentioned this. So let's clear this up right away. This is not Silmarillion rights. So these are not anything first stage. Okay. They are essentially playing with the same rights that Amazon has right now. So appendices, Lord of the Rings, potentially Hobbit. That's it. But as we've seen and as we've, heard rumors of what kind of stories were pitched when Rings of Power was being decided, what it was going to be, there's some opportunities there. So you saw in the poll, I had a few there. Let me give you here. How about this? How about this hypothetical? This was sent to me by or this was discussed earlier by Justin. Seth, thank you so much for the super chat, by the way. Thank you, Seth. Justin from the OneRing.net actually brought this up, I think months ago on one of their streams. So imagine this, because this is now this is totally possible now. It's feasible. Imagine a young Aragorn film directed by Viggo Mortensen. But not only that, since you've got Viggo there, it's young Aragorn. He gets to handpick who plays him. And as the director, he gets to help coach and mold what I would imagine would probably be some young up-and-coming star, not somebody too famous already, but an up-and-coming fresh-faced star, and mold that actor into Aragorn, into a young Aragorn. Could totally happen. I would love to see Viggo in the director's chair. Local client, thanks for super chat. Bill the Pony's Journey Home from Moria trilogy. Oh, it's not even just a single film. You want a trilogy. First Age, 3 films. Yeah, Riley. So we did cover that a minute ago. Thanks for super chat. But yeah, these will not be First Age. The Tolkien estate still 100% holds the rights to First Age. Lord App, thanks for the super chat. Folks, please hit that like button. We've got almost 2,000 people in here. Let's see if we can get up over 2,000. Yes, so someone pointed out animated Lord of the Rings could totally happen. Could you imagine? I don't know if it'd be a trilogy. Maybe they expand it. I would love to see it expanded to have Tom Bombadil and everything. Maybe it becomes 4 or 5 films worth. I don't know. But animated Lord of the Rings in the style of these mini epics right here. I love these things. Made by Weta. We could get Weta back in Middle Earth again. Howard Shore and practical effects. Now they've already got John Howe and Alan Lee on board for War of the Rohirrim. They're right there. They're in-house right now. It feels like it could totally be. I don't know if Peter Jackson would go back or not. Personally, I would love to see Peter Jackson come back, even if it was only for a single one-off film. Like, just because he was put in such a crappy situation with The Hobbit when it was like he had to take over or it wasn't going to happen. And it was crazy short timeline. And they had the stupid studio mandates like the love triangle thing. That wasn't fair. I would love for Peter to get a chance to go back and tell, look at all these appendices stories. Go to Peter Jackson and say, which one of these piques your interest? Which one of these are you fired up about? Do you want to make a movie on it? Zach, thanks so much for the super chat. Hannah, thank you as well. You guys are hopping. Love it. Isaac, would you like to see a remake of The Hobbit? So I'm gonna go back. So if we're talking about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, I would say animated. I think that would be the next thing I'd want to see. I think it's a little early to have live action remakes of those. But animated, I could totally do that. Absolutely. Someone said young Aragorn's gonna be Tom Holland. I don't think he quite fits the bill. Okay, so we do have. This is fun because this is like a developing story. All right, I'm just gonna pull this up here. This is from Fellowship of Fans. Fellowship of Fans is reporting that Warner Brothers has basically they've signed a 3-year initial extension for movie rights. And I think I saw him. Let's see here. So my understanding of this, I think this is still kind of an in development thing, but it sounds like it's initially for 3 years and then Warner Brothers can renegotiate maybe. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but that was my initial understanding reading through their tweet thread. All right. Man, this is fun. I love breaking news. This is really cool. Hey, over 2,000 people. That's awesome. Are you guys pumped? Here, let's do a poll. Pumped or not pumped? Boom. New Middle Earth movies, pumped or not pumped? Brooke Blakely became a member. Shout out to Brooke. Artcraft. Hey, guys. An option that hasn't been discussed is the Gondor Kinstrife would be a fantastic way of exploring Gondor beyond just Minas Tirith. Yeah, that's a great one. I will say one of the things that is kind of dicey a little bit with some of these is there's a lot of downer stories. Like if you're pulling from the appendices, Lord of the Rings is the one that ends happy, and The Hobbit ends happy. So yeah, but okay. So I'll throw out a trilogy idea for you guys, and you can tell me. 84% of you are pumped. I'm with you. All right. So yeah, I like the Gondor Kinstrife. Depending on, it's nice because you can kind of pick the window of time that you tell that story. So maybe you can tell it in a way that isn't so depressing. I mean, you can have a depressing movie in there here and there, but it'd be nice to have some hopefulness. I think the young Aragorn thing could do that. Here's a trilogy for you guys, okay? That I just thought of right before I came on the stream, okay? A trilogy, a I'm going to call this the Dwarf trilogy. The War of the Dwarves and Orcs, okay? The War of the Dwarves and Dragons, and the War in the North. I guess technically the Dwarves and Dragons would come first. So maybe Dwarves and Dragons also includes the fall of Khazad-dûm with the Balrog. I don't know. Maybe they don't connect perfectly, those three. But the two that could connect really well are the War of the Dwarves and Orcs and the War in the North. You have Dane Ironfoot as your through line for that story. And you tell the failed attempt to reclaim Khazad-dûm after Thror is killed. Dane kills Azog, as he does in the books. And then Dane is still alive in the War in the North. I would love to see Morgoth on the big screen. That would be awesome. Howdy the Cat, thanks for the super chat, by the way. That would be awesome. That's not what's happening with these rights, but I did like the one shot with the two trees in Rings of Power where they have like the silhouette or the shadow, I guess, of Morgoth. That was one of my favorite shots from that show. Nick Corbin, Angmar Wars could have hobbits for the general audience. That is true. That is true. The later part of the Angmar War, we know that hobbits actually fought in the Battle of Fornost. Do you think we'll ever see First Age stuff? And why do you think the Tolkien estate isn't allowing it? So the first part, I think eventually we will. I think at some point down the road. I mean, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have never guessed that we would have gotten a Second Age show, that the Tolkien estate would have negotiated that. So I mean, from that alone, it kind of tells me that the Tolkien estate has some level of interest in opening up rights to stuff. I think it was smart of them to start with Second Age and not go immediately to Silmarillion, to First Age stuff. But yeah, I think especially if the right, and to also cover the part of the second one, why don't you think the Tolkien estate is allowing it? I think they're just protective. Christopher was very protective of the stories, and I think they just want to protect the stories themselves. They don't want it to be just willy-nilly, all these adaptations happening with no control over you know production value, quality, stuff like that. So I think the First Age stuff above everything else is what they're going to be most protective of. Entwives trilogy confirmed. You guys really like the trilogies, I gotta say. Thanks for the super chat, Andy. Dashwood House, thanks for the super chat. I would love to see Rohan more, but War of the Rohirrim is coming too. If it's young Aragorn, then Rohan's going to be a part of that, right? It would be. It would be a little bit before Aragorn goes to Gondor as Thorongil. All right, new poll question for you guys. Live action or animated after War of the Rohirrim. You could only pick one. Now I know I'm going to get flack because I didn't give an option to say both. But if you only had to pick one, live action or animated. So yeah, young Aragorn could definitely play some part in Rohan. Jed Brophy needs to come back and play like several characters. 100% Jed Brophy needs to come back. Yes. Speaking of coming back, naturally, the question is going to come up. If Warner Brothers is returning to Middle Earth, could potentially Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Philippa Boyens come back to Middle Earth? And they had a very, very short statement that they released, actually, like minutes after all this came out. So the three of them said in a statement, Warner Brothers and Embracer have kept us in the loop every step of the way, the Oscar-winning trio said. We look forward to speaking with them further to hear their vision for the franchise moving forward. So chat, what do you make of that? What do you think? All right, 74% say live action over animation. 3/4 of the audience there. Okay. Well, I'll post another poll. Do you want Peter, Fran, and Philippa to return? Kyle, I hate to break it to you, but there will not be Baron and Luthien as part of this deal, at least. Maybe someday. Animated Hobbit would be, yeah, I think that would be great. One movie or one season TV. Absolutely. Man, this chat is hopping. I love it. All right. Nothing to contribute, but I just want to say I love your content. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for the super chat. How many movies? All right, let me know. Okay, we've got 89% so far saying you want Peter, Fran, and Philippa to return. That is overwhelming. Matt Ray, give us the Angmar War or the Gondorian Kinstrife. I don't know anything. Anything, he says. Angmar War. So let me know in the chat, guys. How many? Give me a number. Presumably 1, 2, or 3. How many films do you think should or could be made realistically of the Angmar War? If they cover the entire thing, it could totally be a trilogy. 7? Lots of 3s. Saw 5. Lots of 2s and 3s, I feel like. Love to see Gundabad, Scott says. Jordan, thanks so much for the super chat, my friend. Bayorn, solo movie with a lot of darkness, directed by PJ and scored by Ramin Djawadi. Djawadi? What does he score? Done. Oh, Pacific Rim. Okay. Oh, he did the original Iron Man. Interesting. Peter Jackson to head them like Kevin for Marvel. That's one of the things I said as I was talking to somebody on the phone about this whole news a little bit before the stream. I was like, I can just see it at Comic-Con, them introducing their version of Kevin Feige. Oh, yeah, he also scored Game of Thrones. That's probably the big one that you had in mind. Kathleen, thanks so much for the super chat. Would love to see Richard Armitage come back and play Thorin in a movie about the war with dwarves and orcs. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be down for that. I thought like Billy Connolly wasn't bad as Dane, but he seemed very CG to me. Like it was obvious he wasn't really moving around hitting stuff. It was very CG, but a younger Thrain would be awesome too. Luke wants to know what's the TLDR. The TLDR, my friend, is that Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema have reached an agreement with Middle Earth Enterprises, which is now owned by the Embracer Group, to make more movies in Middle Earth. So we will have more theater-going experiences in Middle Earth, my friends. Christopher, big fan of the channel, would be pumped to see a dwarf adaptation with kingdoms in their prime, like Dane Ironfoot against the forces of Sauron. Yeah, that's the war in the north, right there. Absolutely. This is interesting. Scribbler says, today I learned 2011's War in the North was the first video game based on both the books and the movies after Warner Brothers got both rights in 2009. Interesting. I had no idea. I know there is, I believe is it Fantasy Flight or Games Workshop that has both rights to film and books when they make their games. Aaron, thanks for the super chat. Britney Spears is Galadriel. Get out of here. Tony, new member, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ooh, the Fell Winter would also be awesome. Agreed. Now we'll get... Which one are we getting in Rohan? Long Winter, right? Long Winter is Rohan. Fell Winter is later, I think. Isn't the Fell Winter when Gandalf first meets the hobbits and the Long Winter is Helm Hammerhand? I'm pretty sure that's right. Are none of the first age stories in the appendices? So the way I don't think there is any first age stories in the appendices. There's some second age stuff. But so here's another consideration with that. So it's a common question, like, so you notice in the extended version, Aragorn talks about Beren and Luthien. And the only reason he's able to do that is because they're mentioned. He's just mentioning them, but they, and they're mentioned in the Lord of the Rings. So they could do that. But just because Beren and Luthien are mentioned in Lord of the Rings doesn't allow you to adapt their story. So, even if like there's characters listed, you couldn't turn around and like tell their story. So Beren and Luthien is like the best example. They're mentioned in Lord of the Rings, mentioned in the appendices. But because the main body of their story is in the Silmarillion, you would have to have rights to the Silmarillion to be able to tell that. Or I suppose, the estate could potentially just sell the rights to Baron and Luthien, like the Baron and Luthien book that has the various versions of that tale. Our Turkish, thanks for super chat. All right, so I'm going to end this poll. 87% say they want Peter, Fran, and Philippa to return to Middle Earth. That is overwhelming, folks. In a landslide. Objection, the last straw. Thanks for the super chat. Could Thorin, along with Ironfoot, also be a main character in your trilogy of the dwarves? Yeah, he could definitely be a character in the War of the Dwarves and Orcs. We know he's there, so he could definitely play a part. But he's not gonna make it past the Hobbit. So, spoiler alert. So yeah, that's why I think it would be cool. Well, it depends on if you're able to adapt anything from the Hobbit. Like, can you show? Again, like it gets into those crazy rights where, if Amazon owns distribution rights to the Hobbit material, it's kind of through the MGM thing. That's a mess. Yeah. I just think Dane would be a cool character to focus on. It's got that red axe in the books. I wish they had the red axe in the movies. There's concept art. If you watch my Dane Ironfoot video, you saw there's some concept art pieces from the movies with Dane with his red axe. I wish it was in the movie. The Dunedain Hunt for Ungoliant thriller, please. So those are two different ages there. The Dunedain don't exist until they're the descendants of Numenor, so like you could call them Dunedain, I suppose, after they've left Numenor. But Ungoliant is only first age, so yeah, they would not intersect. You have to be pretty brave to hunt Ungoliant. But shoot, even Hunt for Gollum, remember that fan film, Hunt for Gollum? Stories like that, like, that would take more originality, but they could. Give John Williams a chance at Lord of the Rings. Do Angmar. First time seeing Glorfindel, Elladan, and Elrohir. Oh, Elladan and Elrohir. Wouldn't that be great to meet Elladan and Elrohir? Denethor in-laws kind of like meet the parents. What? Okay, you guys are getting ridiculous with some of these. The battles against Lorien and Mirkwood, against Khamul from Dol Guldur would be cool to see. Galadriel being all powerful and stuff is always great. So Khamul was not in Dol Guldur when they fight against Lorien and Mirkwood. All the ring wraiths are in the south, fighting and the War of the Ring in the south. But you're talking about the war in the north there, where there are forces from Dol Guldur led by somebody we don't know who. But yeah, War in the North is it's a good potential. Like, the cool thing about War in the North is you could essentially, like, you could connect it to those films and only need, like, if you're bringing back original cast, would be someone to play Dane, Ironfoot, whether that's Billy Connolly or whoever. Kate Blanchett to be Galadriel, which would be awesome. Could you imagine seeing Galadriel tear down Dol Guldur? Oh my gosh, that'd be so freaking sweet. And then you could bring back Lee Pace's Thranduil. That's the only three. Well, Celeborn too. They kind of forgot about Celeborn in the Hobbit films, but bring Celeborn back. He's gone through a lot in the last while, guys. In the last how many 12 years now? He's been forgotten on screen for 12 years. Bring back Celeborn. So Dane, Celeborn, Galadriel, Thranduil. Those four. That's all you need. All the rest could be new cast, and you could tell the War in the North story. If you really wanted to, you could bring back oh my gosh, Luke Evans, and he could play his own descendant. Brand, King Brand. I'm liking this idea. I'm liking the War in the North idea. Because it would connect so easily with very little of the original cast having to come back, who have aged quite a bit, obviously. But I think Kate Blanchett would still pull it off, 100%. Lee Pace would still pull it off. Man. War of Sauron and the Elves, Numenor, Last Alliance. So Aaron is basically saying what Warner Brothers should do here, and this thought is definitely crossed some folks' mind, is take what Rings of Power is doing and just do it in films instead. Oh man. That thought, so I was on the phone with someone who said, could you imagine if if Warner Brothers comes in and just like skips ahead by 4 seasons and says, "Yeah, we're gonna do a War of the Last Alliance movie," which would be like season 5 for Rings of Power, and they just like, kind of rushed to the finish line and said, "Yeah, we're just gonna do our own The War of the Last Alliance." I would take 2 adaptations of The War of the Last Alliance. May the better war win, I guess. I don't know. The Gollum Cup. I think I got this on Amazon, maybe. Gollum Coffee Mug. Just search Gollum Coffee Mug. I break it out for special live streams. Breaking news. Breaking news live streams. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Oh, this is a great question. Evan says, could this be a ploy just to keep Amazon from getting the movie rights and we won't actually see any new content? I don't think it is. I don't think so. If it was, that doesn't, I don't know why, because presumably striking a deal, I don't know. I guess it's not 100% certain that they put down money for it, but I would imagine Warner Brothers put money down for it. And why would they pay to just sit on rights? That doesn't make sense. It's kind of like when Embracer bought Middle Earth Enterprises. I immediately thought, okay, stuff's going to happen. Like, they're going to do stuff. You don't buy rights just to not make anything. Yeah. I don't think yeah, that wouldn't make any sense to me. If it was just like, I'm gonna buy this toy and not play with it just so you can't buy it. Yeah. No, I think stuff's happening, because otherwise you wouldn't see, seemingly, Embracer, Middle Earth Enterprises are talking about working together on this. Like, you wouldn't see that kind of enthusiasm if that was the case. Mint Kit 1. If they did the Angmar War, it would be the perfect chance to see Glorfindel on screen. Absolutely. Yeah. At this point, Glorfindel, he's either got to come in the Angmar War, or maybe like if first stage rights ever got sold, Fall of Gondolin would be amazing, by the way. Yeah, that would be it. What If series? Maybe. I could start with my my Gandalf took the ring video. I've got it. It's like halfway there for him. Bring Bakshi back for an animated movie. That would get some conversation going. I can tell you that. That is, I mean, there are some things I legit love about the Bakshi film. It's not my favorite. I do have a soft spot for rotoscoping, showing my age a little bit. Yoan, thanks so much for the super chat. Hey, Matt, thanks for the content. You made the whole first stage so much easier to read. Oh, awesome. If you could advise the writing scripts. Wait, if you could, would you advise the writing scripts and a proof of concept for the first age? Like on the spot, you want me to like come up with the script and a proof of concept for the first age? Man, the first age would be really interesting though. Like in all honesty, if they ever sell the rights to that, there's some epic stories. But like I said earlier, a lot of the non-Lord of the Rings Hobbit stories are kind of downers. But that being said, I would love to see Children of Hurin. It's so tragic, but it's so good. Yeah, the big three: Fall of Gondolin, Baron and Luthien, and Children of Hurin. I honestly think Baron and Luthien could be done in a single film. The other two, structure-wise, I think would be a little more complicated. Yeah, man, that'd make for an interesting video on the channel, if nothing else, to map out a first stage series of movies. They should do an animated series on the Blue Wizards traveling east. I like the idea of animated series. Yeah, like I said, the Lord of the Rings animated series. Lord of the Rings, the animated series. I would watch the heck out of that. Samuel, thanks for the super chat. As a community, let's stop idolizing PJ and move on from him to a new era with new directors going back to the book and source material for new takes. That's totally valid. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that, it's not like Peter Jackson is the only person capable of making Middle Earth movies. So far, he's certainly done the best job, in my opinion. I mean, there's no arguing with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It is, one of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time. So, yeah. I'm not saying that, yeah. I'm not disagreeing with you because I think, there's definitely something to giving other people a chance. Like there's totally room for new visions. I mean, even War of the Rohirrim, that's, it's not like he's directing that, Philippa, it sounds like has some level of involvement. A lot of the same people are involved and stuff. I think there is an element of don't fix what's not broken. um, if you have the opportunity, and if it's a project that Peter wants to take on, I think it's well documented the kind of the messy situation that the Hobbit films were for him to take on such short notice and to try to make a trilogy, setting out to make 2 movies and then calling an audible, making it into 3 movies. The studio changed it to 3 movies and told him to put in love triangles and stuff. Like, I think people are wisening up to it now, but I think back then, Peter Jackson got hugely an unfair amount of um, ridicule for those movies when it's kind of Herculean the effort to even come out with something. Uh, God, I mean, shoot, I ranked The Hobbit. The score was tied with Rings of Power season 1, and he did it with all those conditions. So the man's got incredible skill. So yeah, I would be totally fine either way. You know, I'm just excited that we're gonna get some more Middle Earth films. It'd be cool to see some new directors going in other directions. Like, gosh, I'd love to see Guillermo del Toro. That would be awesome. Could we get Guillermo to come in and do something? That'd be pretty cool. Um, yeah, but I would also really love to see Peter Jackson come back. I mean, I get, I see a lot of comments, guys, about saying, folks say don't idolize. You shouldn't. There's no reason to idolize any of them, but you also can't argue with the fact that he's done the hands down the greatest Middle Earth adaptation, unless you count the 1981 BBC radio drama, which is the best of all the adaptations. But aside from that, cinematically, there's no arguing with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. What if they made an Ainulindale musical? LOL, please no. See, my theory is that everyone in the Ainulindale actually sings like Tom Bombadil. Tolkien didn't write out what they sing, but I like to think that everyone comes in like, oh, dilly dolly, we'll make some, let's make some ents and make some rocks, blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine Manway? Even Melkor. Melkor's Discord, but it's just like a distorted version of Tom Bombadil singing. Hey, doll. Chaos and death, rah. It can all be great as long as Amazon is not involved. And if Peter does it, they give him enough free time to do his magic. Thanks for the super chat. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Like I said, you can't get good adaptations if adaptations aren't being made. I've said that all along, and I'll continue to say so. Arnor in the War Against Angmar. That is a popular one. Rom-coms. We got our first rom-com comment. Lorelei Core, thanks for the super chat. I need an early 2000s, that's very specific, style rom-com of Baron and Luthien with Adam Sandler starring as Baron. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Maybe Higgy can make up a mock up a poster of that. Who would play Luthien then? Would it be like Jennifer Aniston? Or Kate Hudson or somebody? I don't know. Tell me, who do you guys think? Drew Barrymore, that's a good one. Yeah. Rob Schneider is Luthien. Oh my gosh. Oh man. Josh Gad is who on? Oh my word. This is some great casting, guys. Aragorn Interquel. I have not heard that phrase before. Thank you for introducing me to Interquel. With Bilbo and Frodo, tragedy/adoption. Oh, so we'd get like how Frodo, how Bilbo came to care for Frodo. So I was looking back at this a while ago, and there was actually rumors that I'm blanking on his name, but it's the guy who plays Alfred. You guys know how I feel about Alfred. But there's actually rumors back in the day that he was going to be playing Drogo, Frodo's father. I think I would have preferred that. But I thought for sure. So going into Battle of Five Armies, I thought for sure that they were gonna adapt it to where Bilbo comes home to find out that Frodo's parents had drowned. Frodo's a little kid, and he's either and that Balin was gonna come back and offer to take Frodo. That's what it was. Okay, so he's gonna come back to the Shire. Everything's cool, right? And then Balin and Gandalf come and visit him like they do in the books. Um, tell him about Erebor and then how he's gonna go reclaim Khazad-dûm and invite Bilbo along. But then he's gonna get like a knock at the door, and it's gonna turn out that Frodo is orphaned and his um, parents have died. And if Bilbo takes off, he's gonna be raised by the Sackville Bagginses. And so Bilbo stays to raise Frodo, and he sets out instead on the adventure of parenthood. That's what I thought was gonna happen when I was in Battle of Five Armies. So you can tell me if you think that idea sucks. You won't hurt my feelings. But that's what it was. All Things Lore, thanks for the super chat. Oh my god, it's the Nerd Strike Back. Hey, we've got some pretty cool Mando content coming up over on Nerd Strike Back, by the way, guys. If you haven't seen it, that's our secondary channel. We cover Star Wars. The Nerd Strike Back. I know it's not his usual wheelhouse, but I would love to see Dillis. I was so focused on not butchering the last name that I mispronounced the first name. Dennis, the guy who did Dune, Villeneuve. I don't know if that's right. Take on Middle Earth someday. I think he did a good job with Dune. Like it was visually, it was amazing. I have not read the book, so I can't chime in on like how it was as an adaptation, but it was very impressive. Villeneuve. People are typing it out phonetically different ways. The rights to the Silmarillion. Is there a known figure that has ever been discussed concerning the entirety of the work? Like how much they would sell it for? $7.8 trillion. No, I have no idea. I don't think that's. I don't know. I don't think that I doubt that that's public information. It's certainly not information that I have. Of Gondor asks, any idea about Weta? Here's an idea. They should be involved with the new movies. There we go. No, we have no idea what's going on. I know Weta is involved in some form or fashion with War of the Rohirrim. So that's good. Oh, Villeneuve. Okay, now people are trolling me with incorrect pronunciations. It's not Villeneuve. Get out of here. I want someone to build a real life Helm's Deep. Oh, hey guys, here's something that we haven't talked about. Middle Earth Enterprises. In this article, it points out that they own the rights to things like films, but they also drop theme parks. Could this be a, open a doorway to us getting a Middle Earth theme park? Now, there's been rumors. I've read articles because this is one of those things. Do you have those things where you will Google it every once in a while just in case there's some news that has slipped through the cracks and didn't trend or something? For me, it is Lord of the Rings theme park or Middle Earth theme park because I'm so desperate for that to be a thing because I would love it so much. Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars park is really good. Um, what Universal has done with the Harry Potter worlds is a phenomenal. And I've seen rumors and stuff that Universal might have a Lord of the Rings theme park down the road, like based on the world that Peter Jackson, like his visual style and everything. Would that not be insane? Would you go? That sounds like a good poll question. Let's do a poll question. Here we go. I'm biased, so that's those are your options. Middle Earth theme park. Heck yes or nah. I'm boring. So yeah, who knows? Maybe one day we will get to go in Helm's Deep. Wouldn't that be crazy? No matter what they do, I'd be happy to see or hear an Aldarian and Arendis name drop. Oh. That would be that's another one of those that's like not exactly the most happy tale, but it is a really good tale. But I believe the bulk of that story is in Unfinished Tales. So they would have to have the rights to that. I don't think that's in the cards as of right now. Mighty Mulatto, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. You think the 25th year box set is going to be a thing with added scenes and all? Man, that's what I'm hoping for. I think we could. It makes sense. Like that's a huge anniversary. And that's only how many years away is that? 3. 3 years away. That gives them plenty of time. The Mithril cut. Yeah. Maybe one of my mods can fish up the link. It's been a while to the change.org petition I made for the Mithril edition because I want to see all those deleted scenes. I want to see deleted scenes, behind the scenes stuff. I want to see the shots of Arwen at Helm's Deep, even though it's not going to be added back in. But yeah, I want to see the footage from that. I want to see the epilogue stuff, like Gimli and Legolas after the war. I want to see it all of it. There we go. Katie dropped it in there. Thank you, Katie. What about something about the Oathbreakers? Cheryl, thanks for the super chat. Yeah. Again, kind of a tragic tale if you're, telling it from the Oathbreakers perspective. It's kind of a bummer. But it's compelling. Just saying, we are loyal fans. PJ's the GOAT. How about a movie about Doran's Bane or the Burning of the Shire? Scouring of the Shire would be really interesting. Like just the Scouring of the Shire? I don't know if you could do a whole movie about Doran's Bane. I think you could do Fall of Khazad-dûm. I guess if Doran's Bane is like the monster of the movie kind of thing, maybe. I have always thought that it's very interesting the fact that the dwarves hold out for a year against Doran's Bane. It's pretty dang impressive. I want to see the young Aragorn as Thorongil in Minas Tirith and annoying the hell out of young Denethor who sees this stranger as competition. Yeah. That would be really interesting to see a young Denethor who is favored, wait, no, a young Denethor whose father favors Thorongil instead of him, because it plays out exactly like Denethor does to Faramir, and it's kind of when you know the deeper history, you're like, man, Denethor, you're kind of a jerk to your kid the way your dad was a jerk to you a little bit. Guys, we have a surprise guest.
Hello, everybody. Hey, wow. And does my new microphone work all right? Tap, tap.
Yes. Yeah, sounds great.
I'm going to do this sexy bedroom voice. Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Not that it's not
It's
that
great to
kind of
see you.
stream, Cliff.
And
Jeez.
hello. What? Look at me. I'm bundled up for the winter storm. We have this really big winter storm here in Los Angeles. We had our first blizzard warning in Los Angeles County for the past 60 or 70 years. It's been really crazy, and here I am. Everyone's seeing me now, bundled up for the winter weather. Hello, Matt, Nerd of the Rings. It's good to see you.
Hey, yeah, thanks for joining. So, Cliff, I just had our most recent poll here. I brought up the fact that there's been rumors of a Middle Earth theme park for a while now.
Yes.
There was some like back over the summer, I believe it was, that people were saying that Universal might be in a landing spot for such a thing. And I brought up the fact that in these articles, a lot of these articles that are talking about these new films, which we'll circle back to here in a minute, but they drop the point that Middle Earth Enterprises also owns theme park rights to Lord of the Rings. And so we've been wondering, like, could this be a sign of traction to come in that area, which I think would be amazing. And so I put out a poll, Middle Earth theme park, and 81% say heck yes, with 19% saying no. That's pretty good. Pretty good positive poll there.
Do you know what? Do not underestimate the power of putting somebody in an immersive environment. And I need to put this in perspective of what recently happened with Disneyland opening Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, yeah.
And right after the pandemic. And everybody got a chance to go and see what the world famous Walt Disney Imagineers had created.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no shortage of praise for what it's like to leave Frontierland behind, cut a left at Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, and then suddenly you walk through this tunnel, and then there's speakers around. There are ambient sounds of galactic music. Then you walk through the tunnel, and everything around you, including the rock surfaces, the flora, the fauna, the choice of landscaping and plants, the sounds of birds, alien insects hiding in the bushes, and things, and you walk right into Batu, the forced perspective of these giant petrified trees that stand, they're really not that tall, but they do appear to be thousands of feet towering above you because of the trick of perspective. And who's better at tricking a forced perspective than Peter Jackson and the Hobbits and all that?
Yeah.
If you were to walk around for just half a day in that Star Wars land at Galaxy's Edge, you get the feeling of what if somebody put that amount of effort and talent to successfully give us an immersive experience of walking into a place familiar in Middle Earth. Perhaps that famous outdoor courtyard where they have the Council of Elrond. Imagine waterfalls in the distance. Imagine leaves falling around you and the crisp breeze of air. It's amazing what they can do. And even though
Rivendell is the most popular answer when I ask people, where would you want to live in Middle Earth? It's either the Shire or Rivendell almost every time.
Every time. It might be people are saying, no, I don't like this idea because of gross commercialization as an aspect of, Tolkien, who only wanted to leave a literary legacy. Professor Tolkien's concern was certainly not theme parks or motion picture franchises. His concern was a literature, a body of literary work. And
Yeah.
it is understandable that some people in fandom do not want to cheapen that approach to
Mm.
the academic approach, the literature that we love so much, that we study, that we appreciate. But aside from that, and that is a fair concern, there's no underestimating the power of people wanting to walk into the world, and that is what a theme park could conceivably do
Yeah.
for a reasonable cost that could be a lot easier than going, thousands of miles across the earth to New Zealand. People
Right.
who, might
Yes.
be able to, I'm just saying there's the idea of a Galaxy's Edge success story told in a Middle Earth aspect of this theme park could have so many locations and interesting attractions and music. There could be so much music. There could be programs of
Yeah.
performers that could be so wonderful. And we've been dying to go to Middle Earth. A theme park could be the quick fix that a lot of us
Yeah.
consumers want.
I and I honestly like as much I do really enjoy Galaxy's Edge,
Mm,
but even more, I think an example of the possibilities is the place that's been rumored a lot with Middle Earth, which is Universal, what they've done with the Wizarding World with the Harry Potter
mhm.
stuff. Because I think that is even more like a as great. And like I said, I went to Galaxy's Edge last fall and I loved it. But even from an immersive standpoint, I feel like a step above that even is what Universal's done over there with Harry
Absolutely. I
Potter.
was just, for the first time ever, at our Wizarding World here at Universal Studios Hollywood.
Hmm.
It was my first time being there. Um, and a certain, I got to mention this real quick. Hey, Dad, a point of pride that my father, who works in construction at the theme parks in Orlando, was the guy and his team who built platform 9 3/4 at the Orlando
Oh,
park.
that's cool.
That was my dad who built that station with his team of people, and it's so exciting. Anyways, hey Dad, big shout out. Um, I tell you what,
So,
our Wizarding World is very small because
yeah,
Hollywood, the Universal Studios version of the theme park, has a very limited space.
right. Yeah.
And it was just a few days ago they opened up the new Nintendo World over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yep. It's interesting for Peter Jackson fans who might want to connect the dots. They got rid of Peter Jackson's King Kong ride,
Hmm.
which was big effort that Weta Digital put into that. The King Kong ride at Universal. They got rid of that, and they got rid of the world famous Earthquake, the ride, which was a recreation of that famous 1970s film Earthquake. So they got rid of all those things and converted a bunch of studio space and opened it all up to make it Nintendo Land. And they're doing the best they can. Their Wizarding World is beautiful, very well built. It's really super cool, but it is tiny in geographic space
Yeah.
compared to the
Yeah.
Orlando park. And
Right. Yeah.
the Embracer group, you want to know who made the first sign of a lot of motion moving on this idea? A Middle Earth theme park was discussed openly in the press release when the Embracer group made their announcement. We all remember
Yeah.
that. We all reported
Yeah.
on that. Over at the
Yeah. That
OneRing.net,
was
we
that was
talked
some
about it
big
for
news
weeks.
too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you did too. So I guarantee you, Matt, they would not have made that announcement unless they were serious.
Yeah.
And
I
the
gotta think there's I mean, this is just further proof, what we've talked about publicly and privately. When Embracer brought Middle Earth Enterprises, you don't do that without the intent of doing something with it. And I think
indeed.
this is just the next step, the next piece of evidence that they are moving on things. We knew that video games were coming. That was, kind of open from the get-go. But I think we're starting to see some traction on some other bigger things um, in the film world. So circling back to the films, anybody who's joining us late here, the big news is that Warner Brothers and New Line have struck a deal with the Embracer Group, which now owns Middle Earth Enterprises, and they're going to be making more films in Middle Earth beyond War of the Rohirrim, which we have coming out in April 2024.
Can't
We
wait for
already knew
that.
about that one. Yeah, I'm pumped for that one. That is an animated film, an anime Um, Presumably, we're looking probably at some more live action ones, maybe some more animated ones. Who knows? Um, but Cliff, immediately, what comes to your mind? So, Alakazoo here says Erebor Lothlorien movies during the War of the Rings. So that's the War in the North storyline. We've talked about the potential of that. What comes to your mind, Cliff, from the appendices and the deeper lore that would be included in these rights? You know, not Silmarillion stuff, obviously. That's not in play here. So, what from your perspective comes to your mind when you hear this news of something that excites you project wise?
It's exciting. I do want to answer this question full on, and I'm going to do that. But I want to go back just a couple of steps to Average Joe in the chat, who is, right on point in saying, please let us not reduce the epic nature of Lord of the Rings to a
Mm.
ridiculous theme park. Please, God, no. And Average Joe, I get it. I totally get that. The distinction would need to be made very clearly, and we better start now, that there are a lot of fans who are on the academic range of deep
Mm.
appreciation. There are fans who are in between deep academic scholarship, and they're just consumers of fantasy. And
Yeah.
then there's a lot of other fans who are just on that far, far end. They're just consumers of a good movie, a good roller coaster, and a rollicking good time. They're fans, but they're not the type to pick up the books for deeper studies. And as long as we all embrace everybody on this wider range of spectrum of fandom and bring everybody together, I don't see why not, really, with the idea of a theme park. But
Yeah.
ultimately, the strongest test of time, the winner of the test of time, will be the literature, not any theme park. You can
Yeah.
rest assured that the books and the way that we study and learn and appreciate Tolkien's languages and his powerful thematic storytelling, that will not be diminished by a commercial venture such as a
Yeah, I
theme
don't
park.
know. I
Right.
kind of look at it like,
But
the
it's a fair
serious
point.
academic study and the like just enjoying fun stuff. And I kind of think, why not both? Like I like theme parks and I
Why
also
not
love
all of it?
studying the heck out of Tolkien. So
Yeah. You know?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think that's where, going in like a little theme park history lesson here. So part of the reason that Universal ended up with the Harry Potter parks is because they were willing to not integrate the wizarding world with like their other realms, whereas like I think, what was it, she like didn't want like Mickey Mouse running around uh whatever location, Hogsmeade or
Right.
whatever.
I get that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and Disney wouldn't agree to that, and so they because of that immersiveness. So yeah, there's a certain level of pushback against like the commercialization, and I get that. Like, okay, but that doesn't mean these things can't be done with a measure of respect, you know. And yeah,
Hmm.
maybe Tolkien would have hated it, but I mean,
He would have.
he also
He
sold the
would have.
rights, so you know.
He sold the
Um,
rights away, and he didn't have any interest in that
and I
stuff.
think if
And
it's done well, it can be really fun. So
indeed,
yeah,
indeed.
if
But now let's
if
get
you
back
don't
to your
like
other
it, that's
question. May
totally
I?
cool. Yeah, yeah. So let's go back. Let's go back. Let's talk about these films. Yeah, potential films. What do you got?
The first thing, and I don't know if anyone's looking at my Twitter feed, but I had a brain wave, and I just made a tweet, and I said to the world, let's look at some of those untold pieces of the story that always get overlooked or ejected from the adaptations. And first thing I think of is The Scouring of the Shire, that entire chapter of a beautiful story,
Yeah.
which itself is a self-enclosed, amazing story, I think. Then there's Tom Bombadil, the like life and adventures of Tom Bombadil. Um, Going to deeper cuts, I think of the Prince of Dol Amroth and his untold story. If they're going to make a beautiful animated movie about the War of the Rohirrim and what happened with, the Dunlendings versus the people of Rohan and Helm Hammerhand, and they're going to do all that stuff, they sure could give us an amazing bit of family history and drama with the Prince of Dol Amroth and
Mm,
maybe Glorfindel.
yeah.
I also thought of Glorfindel, these great characters that are always in the books, but whenever we see a good movie adaptation, they're always
They're
cut.
cut. Yeah.
Always cut.
I
So
was making the case
that's
for
it.
Celeborn recently. Celeborn's been cut for the last, the Hobbit films and now Rings of Power. Celeborn has gotten the short end of the stick. So that was part of the reason I said a War in the North film would be amazing, because
Oh yeah.
you could just bring back Celeborn, Galadriel, Thranduil, and you'd probably have to recast somebody as Dane Ironfoot. But those four characters would be your slight connective tissue, and then everybody else could be new characters. But you could tell that War in the North with the Easterlings invading Erebor and Dol Guldur, moving against Mirkwood and Lorien, and it could tie in nicely to the trilogy.
Mm,
Yeah. Grace here has a question for us. Thank you, Grace. Can you give us your subjective best case and worst case scenario for
mm.
possible new films? I think I've been looking at the best case scenario, because I'm a glass half full kind of guy until
Okay.
the
Yes.
glass is proven empty. And then I move on. Yeah. So, I mean, best case, I don't know if you're looking for specific movie ideas. I think worst case would definitely be, things that are just obviously scraping the bottom of the barrel. If we're getting to the point where it's like, okay, we're gonna do a Gimli origin story when there's zero writings about Gimli's origin. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Um, what about you, Cliff? Do you have any
Um,
nightmare scenarios? Because I'm sure we'll cover like best case scenarios. Do you have any nightmare scenarios?
oh gosh. You know what? The worst case scenario, honestly, would be if somebody wants to do a contemporary, funny twist on Middle Earth and make a show like Velma. That is my
Mm,
worst nightmare. Okay? I don't think,
that's a good one.
and it could happen. Somebody could say, oh, instead of being deep, serious, with all the Sturm and Drang of classic Tolkien epic, I wonder
Yeah.
why anybody would do it, but some weirdo in some writer's room somewhere is going to say, hey, it's a good idea. Let's make a contemporary, modern, adult comedy twist on Middle Earth characters. And it's going to be something really, what's the word? Execrable?
Terrible.
That's a word. There's a 50-cent word for you, kids.
What
But
was the word again?
execrable, which means
Execrable.
like the quality of excrement.
Okay, I thought it might be
Yeah, that's
have
it.
some common
Yeah.
etymology there.
Etymology, baby.
All
Us
right.
Tolkien nerds, always talking about word structures and
Words. Yeah.
words and philology. And okay, best
Okay, so
case
Rowan,
scenario.
well, okay, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Give me your best
Well,
case scenario. We can do
aren't we
that. Yeah.
already on the edge of best case scenario? We have the people from Standalone Complex, the anime artists from Ghost in the Shell, working to make this feature film in
Mhm.
animation, which will be dark, bloody, deep, and thematic. And it's the War of the Rohirrim in an untold chapter of Middle Earth. We're already
Yeah.
getting some of that. And if Warner Brothers is still going to move forward with things like that, there's your best case scenario. And let them put that kind of energy behind how the scouring of the Shire happened, because it's always cut from the films. Tell us the
Yeah.
story of Glorfindel and his first life, and then his death and rebirth and his second life. Whoa! All these amazing things are there, and they're just untold stories. So why not? Oh,
So,
somebody else said, don't forget Círdan, the shipwright.
oh yeah.
Doesn't he have an amazing story himself?
Yeah.
So I think there's some best case
Although
scenarios.
we'd only get like the last third of it in the rights in play
Yeah,
here.
that's
That's
right.
the only thing. Yeah.
That's right.
Um,
But my,
Speaking
my
of which,
focus is
I
mainly
will
the
answer
best
Rowan
stuff is
here
still
real quick.
untold.
Okay.
That's my main
Yeah.
focus. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Rowan here again, thanks for super chat. Rowan brought up conflicts of the First Age, Belagost, Silmarils, Siege of Gondolin. Yeah. So none of those are in play for this. Like Silmarillion is still firmly owned by the Tolkien estate. Maybe they'll sell those rights at some point eventually. Maybe not. Um,
But they don't
same
need to.
thing.
Embracer Group is
Yeah.
going to work on this multi-million dollar deal to take the rights of just Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and spin it into a whole construct of shows and
Mm,
auxiliary products and merch and video games and stuff. It's going to go on, guys. It really is.
yeah. It'll be, I mean, I feel, we talked about, I think worst case scenarios is another one is, from a studio perspective, like when studios try to run before they can walk is what I say with their cinematic universes.
Hmm.
Everyone wants like the Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. Um,
Oh, let's
but
look at Universal and their
but
attempts to do a dark universe and
yes,
how
the
that
dark
failed.
universe that lasted one movie, So like
Yep.
so you put the cart before the horse. I think that's
Yep.
structurally, from a behind the scenes standpoint, I think that's probably the biggest risk.
Hmm.
Um, is if
Yeah.
that hopefully hopefully there's been lessons learned over the last several years. I mean, shoot, Warner Brothers, they're right now rebooting their DC universe. So, hopefully they've learned a lesson from that. It seems like they're,
Yeah.
you know, uh trying to go about it a different method with that. So hopefully they show some measure of smarts here with whatever they proceed with here. J Boy says more Goth trilogy the way you split up your videos with Peter Jackson directing. If not him, get James Cameron. Again, so Silmarillion rights are not on the table. But that does bring up an interesting point. We touched on it briefly earlier in the stream. And the poll was overwhelming. It was something like 75% or 80% want Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Philippa Boyens back. What do you think about that, Cliff?
I don't want to say anything too rude. I'm going to make sure I'm PG rated, but I'm quite excited about that. I am. Okay, look, I just had a talk with my co host, Justin, earlier today, and he said everybody knows why the Hobbit trilogy turned out the way it turned out. You want to
Mm-hmm.
be honest about this? Let's do that, okay? The short production time, the constricted previs and pre-production time frame, the weird choice to split Guillermo's two-film structure to a three-film structure, which compounded their problems, and on top of that, a lot of unnecessary and unwanted direct studio interference.
Yeah.
At this point, I've heard that Evangeline Lilly has made it a concrete blanket contract demand that none of her stories will ever include a love triangle ever
Yeah.
again. Ever.
After
So,
that, after the terrible experience, being told that she wasn't going to be in one, and then they put her into one. Yeah.
right. So, why does it hurt so much? Because it's lame. Okay. So, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry,
No,
but
no. I mean that's I said, Cliff, I said almost the exact same thing earlier. Because yeah, like
terrible.
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
terrible today.
nobody's
But
gonna
okay.
stand up here and pretend that the Hobbit movies are like some pinnacle of cinema or anything. But the
No, but
the situation is well documented, I think, by this point. We know a
mhm,
lot more now than we knew as those films were coming out.
we sure
And
do.
I think
Yes.
as time has gone on, I personally have felt a lot more sympathy toward Peter Jackson than, back
Yep.
then. I think there was some mixed feelings, some frustration, and then like the more you learn about, the timeline that he was under and everything, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's a miracle those
Yeah.
movies are as good as they are, honestly, for
Yeah.
all
That's
the
fair.
crap involved.
I will
I
never
wish they
forgive
were I
them
wish they
for
were better,
Alfred
but yeah.
Lickspittle. Never forgive them for that, but that's okay. Um,
You're in good
thank you.
company because this chat knows that I hate
They do.
Alfred with a burning passion. And the very first super chat of the night said Alfred trilogy on the way.
Oh,
Just to
that's
troll me,
hilarious.
these guys. These guys here. All right.
You're
Nick,
making me
these
laugh.
guys are really on this Silmarillion thing. I'm hoping there's
These guys,
another announcement from the Tolkien estate that the Silmarillion rights have been sold to Warner Brothers. I
I
don't know if
am.
that I don't know how. I wouldn't hold my breath for a long duration for that, I would say. I think eventually I have some level of hopefulness that eventually we'll see Silmarillion content being adapted, but I think it's going to I could see it trickling, and it could be a while before it happens. Like I could see okay, we're gonna sell the rights to Children of Horn, and then we're gonna sell the rights to Baron and Luthien, or something like that, where it's more measured instead of blanket. Like, all right, first stage
Yeah.
is up for grabs, go
Yeah.
nuts, you know.
I get it. I get that. I'm very encouraged by the Oscar-winning trio of Fran and Philippa and Peter coming back to. Well, Philippa is behind a lot of the business with the War of the Rohirrim
Mhm.
right now,
Yeah.
but to have any of them come back to any creative aspect with Warner Brothers backing them up and with them bringing back the team of people who have successfully brought, I only knock The Hobbit a little bit for some of its, bits and bobs, but I
Mhm.
really do enjoy. My favorite thing about The Hobbit deeply is how much I love Gandalf attempting to rescue Thorin's father. I love that stuff so
Mm.
much. I love it as much as the Lord of the Rings stuff. It's only found in the extended version of The Hobbit,
Yeah.
Desolation of Smaug, but it is my favorite stuff in The Hobbit. And I
Yeah,
love,
some of my favorite stuff from The Hobbit is actually it's crazy that it was left out of theatrical, but, like,
yeah,
the moment where Bofur, um, sees Bilbo taking off to
yes,
go, take the Arkenstone he takes it to Gandalf,
yeah,
Thranduil, and Bard, and
yeah,
it plays off of the earlier moment from the first film when they're in the cave
yes,
about to be captured, and Bofur is the one who stops him, and it
yeah,
mirrors that conversation, and it's such a great character moment, and it's a shame that that wasn't in the theatrical, but yeah,
yep.
there's moments that I legitimately adore in those movies.
You know what the best part is? The nonverbal moment after the battle of Five Armies with Gandalf cleaning his pipe and looking around and looking at Bilbo, and Bilbo looking at Gandalf, and
Yeah,
both of them having this deeply powerful
unspoken, yeah.
understanding, very powerful understanding between each other in silence. And it's one of the
I will
best things
yeah.
ever. Um,
I
and of
will
course,
say
it's
the
great.
casting, obviously Ian McKellen, that was an
Yeah.
easy one because he was brought back, but the casting of Martin Freeman as Bilbo and Richard
Oh, yeah.
Armitage as Thorin, like they got the
Yeah.
core trio of that film so dead on. Like anytime
Yeah.
one of the three of them is on screen, I'm enjoying what I'm seeing.
Yep. A- And
There's other moment, like the extra like love triangle stuff, that's the
yeah,
stuff. And Alfred in the love
hate
triangle,
that.
it's like blah. But
You know,
when one of those
yeah.
three is on camera, I'm like, I really like this.
I totally agree. My
Yeah.
my happiest moment in the Hobbit trilogy, besides all of that I just said, is having more Christopher Lee and having a little bit
Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
just enough, of Saruman before he turns sour, before he becomes
Mm,
salty, really salty.
yeah.
So getting the chance to see
Even though
Christopher
he
Lee,
was in the books,
yeah,
he was already evil by that point. But
yeah,
yeah, it was nice to see him, at least fighting against Sauron a bit. It was nice. And
hmm,
Elrond, I mean, gosh, that's some of my favorite stuff is seeing Elrond, a little bit warmer version of Elrond, but then like come the third film, he's total BA Elrond. That sword draw is one of my favorite sword draws in any film of all time when he comes walking into Dol Guldur and pulls out
yeah.
Hat the Fang. It's
Do you
great.
know what? They don't have the rights to it, and I don't know why I'm even saying it, but I think the greatest thing that Peter Jackson and Philippa and Fran could come and do is the Tale of Baron and Luthien as a big,
Yeah,
standalone, epic, Best Picture winning romantic tragedy of all time. I think that'd
it would
be
be
awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I said that's one of the when we were talking through some of the eventual, potential first stage stories and like could they be made into films, would they need to be series, and I said Baron and Luthien is the one that I think you could totally do in a single film. That's the
Right.
only one that is like a no-brainer to me, like yep, that's an epic single solo film right there. Children of Horn, they're like there's so many locations and set pieces. It almost feels like it has to be a series.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
not necessarily, but that's what it feels like to me. But yeah, man, Baron and Luthien. I like to think someday we'll get a Baron and Luthien movie, and I hope it's amazing because it
Mhm.
deserves to be amazing.
The
We got
the
another
I yeah.
question here: Oathbreakers versus Nazgul. Who wins? I don't think this is necessarily a movie idea. I think it's just a random question here. So, what do you think, Cliff?
Oh, um, do you know the oath breakers are sometimes called the scrubbing bubbles of Middle Earth because of those that those scenes in Return of the King where they're just scrubbing the walls of Minas Tirith real fast, you know?
Oh, is that
It looks
because they're
like you
going up the
sprayed
walls? Yeah,
foam, uh,
yeah.
scrubbing bubbles on your kitchen sink to clean. It just runs this way and starts cleaning your sink for you. No, honestly, um, the Oathbreakers probably massively outnumber the Nazgul,
That's true.
but maybe the Nazgul have more individual power than just a
Yeah,
big army of ghosts. So that could be a little, hmm. That's like, well, we could get into some D&D granular
that's
ideas of
pretty.
how do you like, are you going to roll a d20 or are you going to roll 3 d6s for these characters? I don't know, but
Aol and Meglin, told by Guillermo del Toro. We're getting a lot of first stage recommendations.
I love that.
Um, it would be really cool to see Guillermo del Toro come back to Middle Earth in some form or fashion.
Hmm.
For one of these, like that is one of the my favorite film never made is Guillermo del Toro's The Hobbit because
Yes,
I feel like it would have been
yes,
amazing,
yes,
and
yes,
it's such
sir.
so heartbreaking that we didn't get that.
Isn't it?
Um,
Isn't
yeah,
it though?
I'm glad Peter, stepped up and made The Hobbit when it fell through with Guillermo, but
Yeah.
man, I would have it just seemed like there was something special in store there.
Do you know the idea that a standalone story that is self-contained is easily identified in the tale of Beren and Luthien? I want to go back to the Scouring of the Shire because
Yeah,
even as a outstanding epilogue, it is the most outstanding epilogue for this massive trilogy, The Lord of the Rings. But I think it also bears the hallmark of being a self-contained story because
mm,
it is it's able to do many things at once. It can
yeah,
completely resolve the untold story of what really happened to Wormtongue and Saruman of many colors, but it is a strong, self-contained thematic piece about the hobbits practicing isolationism and finding out what happens when the War of the Ring actually comes right up to their door.
right.
And it allows for a lot of closure, even though it's separate. Like you're not talking about the ring being destroyed, but you're talking about the hobbits defending themselves and an assertion of hobbit power and wisdom over one of the Maiar spirits. And that
Yeah,
thematically is kind of weird and interesting to me. It's about a Maiar against all these halflings.
yeah,
And it resolves itself at the expense of Saruman because Professor Tolkien has a moral to that story, a very big
yeah,
moral to the story. And we get a lot out of it. And I think that The Scouring of the Shire would be a fantastic standalone film. And it's one of those
mm.
things that's always been cut from adaptations, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be on board for standalone for Scouring of the Shire, but and I brought
A
this up
series,
earlier, but
a
animated
limited series, maybe.
animated Lord of the Rings series is what
There you
I'm
go.
gunning for. I've been
Hey,
gunning
now.
for ages in this style, Weta mini epic style, an animated Lord of the Rings show, or I mean, we're talking Warner Brothers and films right now. It could be an animated series of films where
Yeah.
we get to see things like Tom Bombadil. I think an animated series would work best because then you could have the Tom Bombadil episode that just like sits on its own. And if people don't want to watch it, they can skip it, whatever. But you're gonna have this random Tom Bombadil episode where it's supposed to be, and it's gonna be amazing. Um,
I love
yeah.
it.
So Jonathan asks, how about more musical adaptations of Tolkien's songs slash poems? So
Wow. That's a
I don't
great
know if
idea.
that's if is that like Are we talking like a recording artist, like putting out an album, or are we talking like when you say musical adaptation, are you talking like I don't know. I'm trying to think of a musical. The
How
Greatest
about
Showman in Middle Earth or whatever. It's the
sure?
first
I mean,
musical I
well,
could think
instead
of.
of being like, in the idiom of a Broadway musical, it doesn't have to be that idiom. It could be like the Fantasia idiom, which is where Disney was
Oh,
presenting a musical program. And it was a musical program that would rotate and take segments of music in and out and change over the
yeah,
years, right? That'd
yeah,
be an interesting approach. I like that idea, actually.
yeah. Ryan
Hey, I love
says
you too,
they love
Ryan.
you,
You're the
Cliff.
best.
New Warner Brothers Lord of the Rings films. Huge news. Yeah, I think that was my initial reaction when I saw that. I was like, this is big news. Like it's been in limbo for a while now,
Hmm.
whether or not Warner Brothers had rights. Could they make more stuff? The only thing we've heard about is War of the Rohirrim. And then this drops today, and I'm like, okay, it is like it feels like it's go time with Warner Brothers right now.
It is. To answer you, Sydney, in the chat, Warner Brothers cannot make a Lord of the Rings series at all. You are right. That is absolutely right. The television rights are only with Prime Video, only television. If it's theatrical film and release in theater, like War of the Rohirrim, then that is what Warner Brothers has now reasserted that they have complete control over. And I mean, that means, from what Justin tells me, they can announce in development as many feature films as they bloody well want before this next 3-year period of time expires. That means they could, if they wanted to, Warner Brothers could hyper accelerate a lot of projects that are announced, and yet they still have to get their period of gestation,
Hmm.
production, and finishing, post production, even though that would be outside the 3-year boundary. At least they have the
It has to
legal
be
right now
started. Yeah.
to start. Boom.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Zachary says, I'm late. I know. Updates on Rings of Power. We haven't really been talking about Rings of Power today. That's not the big news of the day. I mean, I don't really have any I haven't really heard anything. I think, season 2 is in development right now.
Mhm.
Expected sometime 2024, which is the same year we're getting War of the Rohirrim. If I had to guess, I'm just purely guessing, but I'm guessing probably fall of 2024 maybe. Um but again, that's just a guess. I have no idea. I would imagine they're not going to aim for the same. They're not going to aim for spring 2024 with War of the Rohirrim coming out at the same time. I think that would be unnecessary competing with each other. Um, all right. Josiah says it's infuriating how many are okay with Disney throwing away 45,000 years of mythology. They'd have to
He's
pay me to
referring to
go to
Star Wars.
yeah, yeah. Go to Galaxy's Edge. I know I'd hate every minute of it. Long live the Star Wars extended universe. Well,
Yeah.
Josiah, I can respect that.
Yeah.
I will say. So I posted this on. I think I
I
posted
get
on
that.
Twitter the other day. I just started listening to the audiobook of Heir to the Empire. I just
Yeah.
finally. This is my first extended universe
Oof.
foray.
Yeah.
Um,
How
and
is it so
yeah,
far?
it's good. I really like the
Mm.
character of Thrawn. Um,
Well,
I've
Thrawn is
I've
great.
read I've read the new Thrawn books and really enjoyed those. Especially they've done 2 trilogies now of his books. But the very first one they did, and then the third one, I think it's called Thrawn Treason or something like that. So yeah, that's a character, and I've watched Rebels with my kids. I really like that character. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited to dive into the extended universe stuff. But yeah, I get it. Extended universe stuff is cool too. No biggie.
I hear a lot of.
Granville.
Oh, go
Oh, sorry.
ahead.
Go
Go
ahead.
Granville.
Oh, Granville says Lord of the Rings or Middle Earth Park possible, maybe Epic Universe Florida? Question mark. Read or heard Universal in talks with Warner Brothers for years, with a possible 2020 announcement that was delayed.
Well, they sure can't build it
Hmm.
here in Hollywood because our Universal Park here has no space. It is the
Yeah.
Orlando Park that
We'll
has
have to meet in Florida.
physical room to breathe and to build out more land. Yeah.
And it's a brand new park that
Yeah.
they're building over there. He's referring to Epic Universe. Like
Yep.
that's a whole new part, not just like, you know, like when they open like Galaxy's Edge, it's like, you know, a section of a park. This is like the entire park, you know, right? Is that, I don't know
Yep.
the terminology between what the lands within a park or whatever, but it's like a whole new park with a bunch of different lands is what I'm getting at.
Yes. I'm if I am I to understand that the Universal Park will be expanded to one quadrant Nintendo land, another quadrant which is established Wizarding World, and
Yeah.
they're going to keep building out quadrants,
Yeah.
and it is within the realm of possibility that Middle Earth might be one future quadrant of the park of Universal.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's
So
just as likely as anything now. Yeah.
allegedly, you know, because like I said, I really like theme parks, guys. So, you know, if you don't like theme parks, that's cool. But I like theme parks. So I I look at I look at the news once in a while. And so what I've heard, I think what people are saying is, yeah, there could potentially be Lord of the Rings. Like that's rumors. Um, I think a How to Train Your Dragon uh land is in there, and
No, really?
Mario, yeah, and
How now
Mario
I love How
and
to Train Your Dragon. I loved all those movies,
yeah.
but is that enough of an intellectual property to
Well,
make a whole theme
they
park
just
area?
announced they're making a live action How to Train Your Dragon. Did you miss that news? That was announced like earlier this week or last week, something like that. So
Anything
yeah,
can happen.
that's a growing thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I think the
okay.
Wizarding World one is like the Ministry of Magic or something. I think is the rumors on that one.
And speaking of
With
theme
room for
parks,
others. Yeah.
there's great success in Japan with Studio Ghibli and the team with all of Miyazaki, who, Hayao Miyazaki, the greatest. This is not debatable at all, folks. The greatest animation director and artist of our living age. It's kind of like living back 100 years or 200 years ago, to be alive during the time of Beethoven and to be sitting
Hmm.
there in the audience listening to an original Beethoven performance. That's where we are in terms of Miyazaki. He's a living master. But in Japan, Studio Ghibli made this beautiful, quiet. It's not a theme park, but it is a theme park, but it's a very quiet woodland environment, and they've made some beautiful buildings and structures that are very familiar locations within Miyazaki films, and it's kind of like a nature park. It doesn't have the regular feel of Tokyo Disneyland or anything like that. It's more like a nature preserve combined with some unique tourist theme park elements and gift shops. And you never know, there could be something that is a Middle Earth design of a theme park that could be really toned down and not quite the usual theme park that you think it is. You don't know yet what they're going to come up with.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'd be interested to see what they come up with. J Boy has some more. We kind of covered those already. So we'll keep on trucking here.
By the way, I love you, Nerd Cookies. It's great to see you in the chat.
Hey, Elaine's here.
You
Cool.
guys you're great.
I haven't caught up that
You know
far.
what,
I'm so far
Matt, you
behind
have
it
an amazing
scrolling.
collection of people here in this chat.
I
What an
do. Yeah.
amazing audience you
Absolutely.
have in this chat. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, and we've been cruising well over 1,000 people this entire stream. We had 2,000 people at the top of this thing. Um,
Delicious.
During the seventh has an interesting question that I actually have some strong feelings on. How would you feel about Ian McKellen or other actors virtual and made younger depending on the story? So this, I
Ooh.
think, if I'm understanding correctly, is going into the whole again, comparing to Star Wars here. So this is like the deep fake Luke thing that we've seen in Boba Fett and Mandalorian.
Or
And
there was also that brief moment of Leia Organa at the end of Rogue
yep.
One, which,
And Tarkin
people had a lot of
throughout
comments
Rogue
about.
One. Yeah.
But there was also the Grand Moff Tarkin who they had
Yeah.
appear as well.
Yeah. A
Yes.
lot. Yeah, he was in it
Yeah.
quite a bit. Um Personally, I I just do not like the deep fake stuff. I feel like it's this weird uncanny valley thing. So like if you can't make him look younger with makeup, then I'm in the boat of recasting. That being said,
Okay.
I now Ian McKellen's an interesting case because like I think he probably could still play Gandalf because Gandalf is, it's not that big of a difference, from what he looked like during The Hobbit probably. So um
Do you think Daniel Wayman looks like a young Ian McKellen?
no, I think he looks like a young blue wizard.
Thank you. I'm with you on that, bro. Like, I am so 100% with you on that, bro. But
And
I mean, do
that's
you
why I
think that the
say
cast?
animated. Animated
Yeah.
because then they can come back as voice cast and it doesn't matter that they've aged 20 years. You know,
Yes.
like or
Yes.
gosh, it would be 25 years, but before we know it. But if we do animated, like Ian McKellen could record voiceover lines for Gandalf. Um
Heck
and
yeah.
like I said, I mean Gandalf, the wizards are old guys, so yeah,
Um,
Ian McKellen might still be able to pull it off, but yeah, I think some of the actors probably, like Vigo is a great example. Like
yeah.
Vigo could not go and play young Aragorn at this point in his career.
No. No,
um
they would need another actor to be
yeah,
well,
and so
yeah,
so
they
I would prefer, so I think that's probably the best comparison that will, to a, let's take like the young Luke example that we've seen in the Star Wars shows. I would
mhm,
rather them, and I've said the same thing for like the Luke character. Like I think they should recast instead of doing the deepfake stuff. And I would 100% say the same thing if we did a young Aragorn show,
yeah.
that they should recast, because it's just this uncanny valley thing for me. And I presented Justin's pitch from, I think, a couple months ago on one of your streams. Maybe he said it ages ago. Um, Vigo Mortensen directing, who then gets to pick out his young Aragorn that he's going to mold, this
Oh.
actor that he's going to mold into his younger self.
Yes.
I'd
Yes.
go for that. I would go
You
for that.
guess what, dude? You win the internet today.
Well, that was Justin's idea, so Justin wins the
Well, I'll
internet.
give Justin that credit. Although I'm reluctant to do that, I will give Justin that credit. Go back 2 steps to this wonderful, wonderful person in the chat who just said Muppets, Lord of the
Oh
Rings.
my gosh.
I want to say, hello, Fingers Titan.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I want to
Fingers
buy you a
Titan.
drink. I need to buy you a drink, Fingers Titan, because the Muppets, Lord of the Rings, is a dream. That's the best thing that could ever. That's your best case scenario, right there. That
Ian McKellen, like, because they have to have the one person who's like a human, right? So like
yes,
it would have to be Ian McKellen
right.
as Gandalf, right? To be,
Okay,
would that be your pick? Would that
I
be your pick
agree. I
for,
totally
yeah?
agree. It has to be Ian McKellen, but because he loves doing pantomime, he loves doing crazy costumes and outfits and comedy. Believe it or not, he's a great, great Shakespearean actor, but he loves to do light comedy.
Yeah.
Ian loves that. But hear me out on this, guys. If we're going to see some comedic take, because they're going to make lots and lots of TV shows because of Amazon's rights, and Embracer Group working with Warner Brothers in this deal, they're going to make lots of other movies. Other things are going to happen. If they dare do a comedic approach to anything J.R.R. Tolkien, they better not do it the way that Velma was done,
Mm-hmm.
with it being way too contemporary. If they're going to have fun with it, then it should be Muppets, which would be much more tasteful, much more funny, because a little bit of anachronistic humor, that is what they specialize in, is
Yeah.
total anachronisms and pop culture jokes. And that could work in a Middle Earth environment, but
So
somebody
probably
somewhere
better
is
for
going to try to
Hobbit
do
than Lord of the
comedy
Rings,
somewhere
right?
along the lines.
Like surely a Muppet Hobbit would make more sense than Muppet Lord of the Rings, right? Don't you think?
Yes, actually, I do.
I think tonally,
Maybe.
it's tonally. I think you could make that transition better if we're going that route, guys. I'm not
You
saying
know
we
what?
should go that route. I haven't jumped on that train yet.
All right.
It would be a funny, if nothing else, it would be like a funny SNL skit to have Muppets with Ian McKellen being Gandalf. or something,
Okay.
a funny skit, if nothing else. Maybe not a
Well,
full-blown film.
I
I
mean,
will say The Muppet Christmas Carol is my favorite Christmas movie.
it is wonderful. It is really
Yeah.
wonderful. I'll agree. But look, some people in the chat think that everything should be earnest and very unironic and earnest in an approach to adapting Tolkien. And I respect that. I do respect that. I'm just giving you guys a fair warning that somebody somewhere is going to try to take a different approach. It's just going to happen.
We'll
So,
see. We'll see what happens.
yeah.
Yeah. Corvus, thanks for the super chat, says Fall of Angmar would be my first choice for a film. So that's the Angmar War idea. Cliff, I posed this question earlier
Yeah.
to the chat. I asked 1, 2, or 3 films. How many films do you think could or should be made out of the Angmar War?
I think that is also a hugely fruitful storyline to go
I think
for.
it's the most popular one I've seen thrown out so far.
It's a very fruitful idea. There is what you'd call fertile ground for the war in the north, the struggles of Cardolan, Hrudauer, and Arthedain, struggling against incursions from the Witch King. They're the men of the north having relations with their next door neighbors, the hobbits, and all these great things happening in between Rivendell, Bree-land, Tom Bombadil, the Shire, and Farnost. And with all these elves and men and hobbits and different characters, and of course, Nazgul, Witch King, lots of orcs and trolls, that is a story framework that could cover a lot of great stuff. Really, really great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the thing I love about it too is you instantly have a recognizable villain that people are familiar with.
hmm
Like
There are no wizards
who
in
doesn't?
that story, though.
No, no. But
No wizards.
I mean, but we have the Witch King. I mean,
Yeah.
like, and as far as villains in the trilogy, the Witch King has more screen time than I mean, if you count his flaming eye, maybe I don't know, but like as far as in the flesh fighting and like being this menacing, I mean, Sauron's still menacing. Don't get me wrong, guys, but as far as a villain that you meet on the battlefield and everything, that's the Witch King more than
Mm.
it is Sauron in those films. And he, I would argue like his armor is maybe not as iconic as Sauron's in the films, but it's
Yeah.
pretty dang awesome, his armor. So like if they were able to use that same aesthetic and show you you would
You
know
know,
from looking at him who he is.
yeah.
um, it can make a really cool villain, especially, I don't know if they'd go into the backstory any, flashback wise of him when he was a human or something, but I
Oh,
don't that
yeah, they could.
like
They
they
could. That'd be
could
great.
because it could draw some interesting connections to, it's kind of I think most widely believed that he was one of the Numenorian lords, and the fact
Yeah.
that he is you know, he was a Numenorian, and these people that he's fighting against are descendants of Numenor. So
Yes.
there's some
Oh,
shared
yeah.
history there that could be explored as well.
Absolutely. I love that idea.
Sorry, Debbie. I just stream when the news breaks. If it would have broke at 9 o'clock this morning, I would have been on a stream by like 10:30 and we would have been ready to rock. But I just go when the news goes.
Well, the news is what we have to keep our eyes open for now because there will be upcoming announcements from Warner Brothers
Yeah.
and press releases where they say, guess what? We're doing another film project and we're going to start production now. So it's going to happen.
Cliff, you know what just got put on my radar is
Tell me.
Comic-Con.
Oh, yes, that's coming up this year, isn't it?
Comic-Con. Yes, they're having
It's
it again
happening.
this year.
Yes, it
But
is.
no, like that we are what? We are almost 4 months away from Comic-Con ish.
Wow.
4-ish months from Comic-Con.
Boy, how time flies, my
I
friend.
could totally see in the next 4 months,
Wow.
you know, that if what could you imagine a scenario where they say okay, guys, so we're not bringing Peter Jackson back to direct any films, but he's going to be the architect of our film universe. And then they bring out Peter Jackson on stage, and then he unveils the slate, Kevin Feige style. I don't know. I'm just throwing out crazy ideas. But could
I'm
you imagine
dying over here. I am
if
dying
can you
over here. It's
imagine
great. What a great
e-
idea.
even if that doesn't happen, even if that doesn't just like even just getting a couple to two or three upcoming, like, here's what we have in the next 2 years. We have these three films that we're making in the next 2 years, in Middle Earth. Like that could be something that I could potentially see getting announced at Comic-Con. Couldn't you?
Yep, it sure could. Oh
Yeah.
man,
I mean, they've
excitement.
got War of the Rohirrim, War of the Rohirrim. Maybe we get a trailer for War of the Rohirrim
I'm excited.
alongside some some further
Look at how
announcements. I don't
excited we
know.
are. This is
I
great.
know.
I'm so excited. You know what? We probably need to get that same hotel because that was a good hotel we were at.
It was. Yeah, we were pretty close.
Pretty good.
Um
It was really good. And there was
Justin,
pancakes and eggs right across the street
it
every
was
morning. It was great.
yeah, that's right. What is the earliest story they can go back to? So now we're looking at, we talked about Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, appendices. So this is appendices stuff here.
Hmm.
That's the big wild card in all this, and where a lot of these potential movies would probably be drawn from is the appendices.
Yes.
Unless
Yes.
we're
That's
getting
right.
like a Gone Buri Gone movie or something.
Hey,
But
thank you for mentioning him. All of his people and his character and all that, it's always
yeah,
omitted in every adaptation.
animated series, Cliff. I'm telling you, animated
Boom.
series. We get
Do you mean like an
everybody.
anthology animated series? Yes?
Oh yeah, like I'm thinking like more linear than Clone Wars is. If you think of like Star Wars Clone Wars.
Yeah?
So you're telling the main story of Lord of the Rings. So like you get Gon Borigan and everything in there. But this is me running the show here, guys. So if I'm running the show, then
Okay.
come
Sure.
what season would it be? I guess if you did one book per season, it'd be, or do you do books within the books? So there's six. I don't know. So either a 3 or 6 season show, like there's gonna be a War in the North companion show to this for sure,
I love it.
and other such things. Um, but yeah, so back to the question from Justin here. What's the earliest that you can think of, Cliff, that like story wise that would be in the appendices that they could adapt? I mean, they could
I
certainly do, we threw out the option of a War of the Last Alliance movie.
Oh, what a
They
wonderful
could
idea.
totally do that.
That is a wonderful, wonderful idea. Unless, well, I got a feeling that by the end of season 5 of The Rings of Power, Prime Video will probably, in their narrative, take us to The Last Alliance, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, yeah,
But
no, they definitely will, but
yeah.
they like
The-
if Warner Brothers wanted to, it sounds like they could take us there first if they want. Well, I mean,
Um,
they already have in the prologue, but yeah.
the appendices don't have anything much at all that's first age. They have lots of second age in a structural outlined history that is very convenient that Professor Tolkien gave us. But most of it's all third age stuff. Most all of it. Um, if you're looking at the tale of years, you could make a whole separate movie about the elves, uh, the Sylvan elves, having uh, starting their earliest kingdom in the north of Greenwood the Great, and meeting some of the skin changers and the early Beornings, and meeting some of the early people who would become dwarves coming to settle in Erebor. And it could be like the early stages of, early kingdoms, the earliest kingdoms that would become seeds of later stories that everybody knows are told in full detail. I don't know. Could be
Yeah.
interesting. Um, I'm I'm looking at the history of dragons now, since Smaug gets to have the main stage of Dragon Time in all these adaptations, and there's never ever been a Glaurung or any other Silmarillion dragon
Oh
show up
yeah.
anywhere. Too bad for and Calagon the Black, but if they wanted to do a whole separate thing, which could just be the history of all these dragons and their different encounters with
Well,
men
yeah.
and dwarves and elves.
We
How
we
about a
have
dragon-centric series, maybe?
I did bring that up, the War of the Dwarves and Dragons, I
Ooh,
think is in the
yeah,
appendices. And that's a
yeah.
fairly early, so that would be, as we think of other things that are from the appendices, like the Fall of Khazad-dûm would be something
Mm.
that you could show, and that could lead into this War of the Dwarves and Dragons.
How about a
And that,
separate movie about Balin's expedition?
yeah, that was another one. Yeah, could totally do that. Again,
Mhm.
so I said this before you came on, Cliff, but the trick with a lot of these is that they're not very happy tales. They don't A lot of them don't end well, particularly. I think the War of the
Yeah.
Dwarves and Dragons, you could spin it kind of positive because they would, uh, go to Erebor, and so it could be like an Erebor Foundation story a little bit,
Ooh.
even though Smaug is coming down the pike eventually, but you could leave it before that happens.
Man, these are well, they have many, many great opportunities, and they know this at Warner Brothers. They really are aware of how many untold chapters are still to be told. And yes, they're going to monetize it and make money off of it. Yes, that's also part of it. But they went to the point of saying to Prime Video, we're going to stand in court in our interpretation of this original deal that we still have these years left to exercise our rights on this IP. And if they were willing to go to court, it might be possible that Jeff Bezos was willing to offer a lot of money to settle it out of court. And I find it most interesting of all the dynamic that Warner Brothers Studios stuck to their guns and decided to
No.
not take any other little side deals or take a whiff on a wiffle ball. They actually wanted to keep and assert that they want to really legally assert that they're keeping their rights because it's worth a lot to them. And they're very much aware of how many untold stories they have yet within
Yeah.
that sandbox to play in. Yeah.
I mean, now I currently have a list that we've talked about at various points on the stream of 8 potential stories, and one of those is Angmar War, which we've already said could easily be a trilogy.
Yeah.
There's
That's
no
great.
shortage, folks. Misty Kate says Richard Armitage is wonderful. Love the cutscenes. Side note: Richard Armitage is an author now. He's got a book coming out, so keep an eye out for that. It's called Geneva. Um,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
That's cool.
So, yeah. All Things Lore says if there was a scouring of the Shire, would Warner Brothers bring back the original cast, Elijah Shawn, Dominic Billy, or would they cast new actors? So we kind of covered the casting versus bringing back. I think for gosh, I don't know, like it would just be so like it would. I feel like those guys. I mean, they're over 20 years older than they were when they returned in Return of the King.
It would have to
I
be
j
animated, and
I
that's your
feel like it would
instant
have to be,
workaround.
yeah, that's the animated thing is the only thing I can think of. Um,
Well, isn't Miranda Otto coming to do voice work for
yep.
War of the Rohirrim?
Yes, she is. Yeah.
Then let's assume she's going to be the framing
Although
device.
although
Yeah.
my pitch on that, Cliff,
Okay.
I don't know if I've told you this yet, but
Here we go.
my pitch on that is
Okay.
live action Miranda Otto
Mhm.
to bookend War of the Rohirrim and live action David Wenham, and she is telling the story to their kids, and this is post Return of the King, and they are
I love
like,
this so much. I'm gonna
right?
die. I'm
Yeah.
gonna I'm
Wouldn't
gonna
that
die.
just wouldn't
I
that just melt your
love
freaking heart?
that. I am going to die happy. If that happens, I'm gonna die happy. Okay.
Could you
That is an
imagine
awesome idea. Dude,
David
that is
Wenham and
such an
Miranda
awesome
Otto
idea.
come back as Faramir and Eowyn, and you see them in their house in Ithilien, and Eowyn settles the kids down for a bedtime story, And what better bedtime story than the time when Rohan almost was completely destroyed?
No
Maybe it's
way.
not a bedtime story. Maybe it's a middle of the day story. Um,
I
but
love that
gosh,
idea.
I
I
would
think
love
it's an
it.
excellent idea, sir. Excellent idea.
Wizard Furby, Denethor versus a field of tomatoes. See, this is, I'm sure there's a reference to tomatoes to be
Like that
made in
one.
the Muppet adaptation. Mohammed, thank you for the super chat. Rowan says, I would
Nice.
love to see more Dane stuff and more stuff on Xanabal Zar and Khazad Doom. Yeah, I honestly think dwarves are one of the civilizations that are most ripe for the picking for some of this stuff.
I agree.
Between war in the north and, I mean, we were talking about the War of the Dwarves and Dragons. He mentioned Xanabal Zar, which is the climax of the War of the Dwarves and Orcs. We've got plenty of wars of dwarves and other people to choose from.
Love that.
Um,
To answer you, Misty Kate, hi, I'm kind of new here too, because I'm not always on the show here with Matt. Um, I'm actually the live host for the OneRing.net, and for the past 22 years, I've been a head writer, editor, and contributor at the OneRing.net for, oh gosh, many events, many conventions, and lots of things around the world. And I got secretly embedded on the set of The Two Towers during the day that Gandalf was healing Theoden and driving the spirit of Saruman out. And I was there that day when Brad Dourif walked into the catering hall after shooting those scenes, and he was so fuming. You could see the steam coming off of him from being really intense in his character. It was the most remarkable thing to see him off stage, because he didn't even come out of character at all. It was really awesome, really intense. Mad respect to everybody there working on that movie. And of course, I'm also the guy who wrote and produced the Ringers
Ringers,
Lord of the
that's
Fans
right.
documentary. Doop-de-doo. So, hey, eventually, I think later this year, we're going to have a new edited version of my documentary coming out on streaming platforms, and hopefully get more news to you guys
Oh,
about that
it's going to be
soon.
on streaming. Oh,
Oh
nice.
boy. Yeah.
In
I'm excited
3D,
about
right?
that. Very excited. Oh no, not
Just
in
like
3D.
Avatar. No? Oh,
Well,
okay.
I will say this much. We upgraded from standard def to high def. So at
Yes. No,
least
I
that
knew that one. I
helps.
knew that one. Yes.
It's a lot
Um,
easier on the eyes.
so Corvus, we were talking about music earlier. Clamavi de Profundi could help in the endeavor of Tolkien's poems and songs. I will say it would be pretty legit if they cast those guys as like dwarves. I love my favorite of theirs is the
Mhm.
rendition of the Song of Durin. And like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe some adaptation can make use of those guys and put them in a song portion, but it would be legit.
I got to take
Granville,
a
thanks
picture
for
of this
becoming a
screen. This
member,
is
by the way.
amazing. Okay. I had to do that. That was
Um,
beautiful.
a story of the Blue Wizards and their work against Sauron in the East. I love the Blue Wizards, and I
Me too.
honestly, I was kind of bummed we didn't get to see Rune in Rings of Power season 1. It looks like that's the direction they're heading, so that's a plus. But yeah, from the get-go when they announced Second Age, I was thinking Blue Wizards in the East. Show me Easterlings, show me Blue Wizards. Um, so yeah, it's very interesting. I would be very interested to see if there's some potential crossover of coverage, I guess you could say, between Rings of Power and whatever films Warner
hmm
Brothers puts out.
hmm I love it. I love the way
Yeah,
you think, brother. I love the way you
I
think.
don't.
I
Daniel
want,
Day-Lewis as Bill and his return to Bree.
yes, Daniel Day-Lewis in a pantomime
He can
pony
play.
outfit.
He can do anything, and he'd win an Oscar for it.
Wait, you gonna pull him out of acting retirement just to get him to do a pantomime horse? Okay,
Yeah. Well, I
okay,
mean,
that sounds
he'd
great.
probably win. He'd win an Oscar for it. It'd be worth
Do you
his
think?
time.
Do you think if if you think that we're gonna get small stakes or small productions. That's not what's happening here. They're going to throw, and I mean Warner Brothers. I'm referring to, Bezos spent that much money on Rings of Power, and he's
Hmm.
continuing to throw more money at it for future seasons. You could
Yeah.
guarantee yourselves that Warner Brothers is going to go big or go home. They're not going to go small with any of these Middle Earth projects that they're trying to do.
I
Just
don't know about,
seriously.
I mean, you don't think maybe a mixture? I could see a mixture of some smaller stuff along with some bigger stuff. Like I think if they did do the young Aragorn thing, it wouldn't have to be huge set piece. Like I the way I in my mind see the Aragorn piece playing out would be the climax would be his battle against the Corsairs. So we get,
Yes, that's a good one.
like Aragorn Pirates of the Caribbean thing going on, you know? But uh but yeah, a lot of that is kind of journeying, and it could be smaller scale skirmishes potentially. I don't know. Um
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't know. It kind of depends on what they pick, but I mean a lot of these things that we've pointed out, Balin's Expedition actually could be smaller scale film wise, I think. Like in terms of quantity of, the battles and everything wouldn't have to be huge because he's not going to have a huge cast to deal with, you know?
There's I agree. There's a big fan film, very successful fan-made movie for The Hunt for Gollum, and they
Hmm.
could redo that entirely.
Oh yeah.
The Hunt for Gollum is a great narrative, really, I
Yeah.
think.
All right.
Yeah,
Nicholas says seeing the Witch King as a more focused enemy would also add more weight to him in the Lord of the Rings movies and
true.
would invoke more fear, respect for him, in my opinion. That would be
Yep,
interesting because, uh, he just kind of bugs out at the end. He's not actually, his army's defeated. He's not defeated.
right,
Um,
right.
he flees at the sight of Glorfindel, which kind of tells you how awesome Glorfindel is.
That's why
But yeah,
Glorfindel needs his own bloody movie.
right.
Yeah,
Oh man. Like, could you imagine? Like, I'm just thinking, like, if someday, like 30 years from now, when you and I are old and decrepit, we finally get like a series that's the entire span of Middle Earth, and like season 3, Glorfindel dies, and like how insane it would be to people who aren't familiar when Glorfindel just shows back up in like season 7 or something of a
yeah,
Middle
that's
Earth show.
awesome. That's awesome.
Jordan says de-aging tech, get the whole crew back. Well, unfortunately, we've lost Sir Christopher Lee since those days. We can't get him back, unfortunately.
Welcome to the chat, Jose Antonio. And yes, that's what we're reporting on. New Line Cinema has announced that they're making more films. We don't know exactly what or how many, but they've asserted their legal right against other people who are probably sniffing around the table, bidding for the rights against them. And they've got another few years to make more announcements of other theatrical film productions. Yes, indeed.
So Luis says, joined late, are the Battle of Dale or the Battle Under the Trees rights part of this? Yeah, so that is all War of the North kind of stuff that we've been talking about. If it were to be adapted in a War of the North potential film, both of those, the Battle Under the Trees, which is Mirkwood against Dol Guldur, and Battle of Dale, which is the Easterlings versus the Dwarves of Erebor and the Men of Dale. Those are both in the appendices. So
Hmm.
absolutely. Those are fair game.
You know what? It's very exciting. And the fact that Fellowship of Fans, give a big tip of the hat to Fellowship of Fans for
Yeah.
breaking the story. Um, and there's a little chit chat with Peter Jackson, and there's his smiling face. Did you see that tweet that he sent out?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
he said, Embracer Group and Warner Brothers have kept us in the loop every
Every
step of the way
step of
through
the
this
way.
process of dealing with the rights. And you know what that means? You're not far off, perhaps, in making an analog that Peter Jackson could now take on a Kevin Feige analogous role,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Who
Yeah,
knows? Who
yeah.
knows? like I said, I mean, of all the people, and I know, like, we had the point brought up, like, it doesn't have to be Peter Jackson for it to be a good Middle Earth adaptation. Like, yeah, like that's totally fair to say. Um, like it's would be totally cool to see other people. It's kind of like when Guillermo del Toro was hired on for The Hobbit. Like, this is different. It could be really cool. I think it will be cool. That being said, like, Peter Jackson's been there, done that, made one of the greatest trilogies of all time. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if, he was involved in this in some form or fashion, or at least in one of the films in some form or fashion. Like, I would love it personally.
Me too. Absolutely. Me too.
Mighty Mim, always a pleasure to watch. Thanks so much for the super chat, my friend. So we'll wrap this up here in the next 5 minutes or so. We've been going for quite a while, actually. Wow.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this has been so exciting to talk with you and to be so engaged.
Yeah.
I should come and chat on your show more often. It'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm excited that you're able to jump on
Me too.
here partway through here. But yeah, so we've been covering some of the potential, books to come, or books, potential movies, sorry,
Right.
movies to come from the book rights that Warner Brothers now has for another few years. Um, Cliff, what was your first reaction when you saw this news? Like, when you saw this pop up in your feed that Warner Brothers has more films in the pipeline.
My first reaction is this is so good that all the rights for all the stories is not lumped with one controlling company. My first
Okay.
thought was, and you and I totally agree that the kind of competition now that is apparent between Prime Video making TV, very high end, expensive television, while Warner Brothers is going to be making high end, expensive live action and animated feature films. But both of them are going to now be competing in the marketplace.
Hmm.
And that is a good thing because that challenges both of them to be better.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I thought.
That's okay. So this is exactly what I kind of started out the stream with toward the
Yes,
beginning. And
sir.
that
Yes.
was going to be my next question to you was, would you agree with this sentiment? Because I've always said, since this rights thing has become a question, that if if the rights are in two different camps,
Hmm.
it breeds this competition where, the audience knows, like, hey, so
Yeah,
hypothetically speaking, 2024 comes and we've got Rings of Power season 2 and we've got War of the Rohirrim. Like, if one of those falters and the other one's a home run, that's going to sway the fan base. We're going to be a lot more interested in the studio that's given us the home run, and it's going to put pressure on whoever's fallen short. Hopefully they're both great come 2024,
oh,
and
hopefully.
we just
Yes, of
we just
course.
win both ways.
But
Obviously that's the hope. But my
yeah,
hope is that it breeds a competition, and that, no, they can't just sit back, as I think we've seen other studios do with properties before, where it's like, oh well,
yeah,
we just gotta keep putting stuff out there. People, they'll just like consume it. Where I feel like if there's two studios involved, theoretically, there's more pressure to make sure that you're putting out the best possible content.
true. And at the very least, there will be more variance in product.
Yeah.
And that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
that's true. Yeah.
There will be more variance and there will be different tone. I mean, the tone and the approach of the anime War of the Rohirrim is not going to be anything like the tone and approach that we have with Rings of Power,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is itself a little bit different from Peter Jackson's world, but is also trying to hew closely to Peter Jackson's world and yet still differentiate itself in its own way. Um, I want to give credit to Bear McCreary for winning the International Music Awards
Yeah.
that he won today. That was
Yeah.
also announced by Fellowship of Fans, and
I've been
I
listening
want to.
to
Oh,
that
yeah,
album I just got it on vinyl, and so I've been rocking out to I posted a clip of me rocking out to Casa Doom on this nice molten gold looking vinyl. It's freaking beautiful.
Oh, I love
But
that
yeah,
stuff.
man, I
I
love,
love
yeah,
it.
Bear McCreary
But
is one of my favorite things about that show. Yeah.
I agree. And I think he's one of the single most like powerful and outstanding creative voices on the entire project of Rings of
Yeah.
Power. His
Yeah.
creative voice is a unique and impressive stamp on a show that is struggling in its first season to find its footing, which is okay.
Mm.
But congratulations, Bear McCreary. Super good stuff. It is a bit unusual to see Warner Brothers and Prime Video with the same intellectual property. Imagine
Yeah.
that Paramount had to split its interest in Star Trek with a competing studio across town.
Yeah.
That would
Well,
be a
that's
little
what
bit
I said
weird.
with like Star Wars. Like imagine if George Lucas had
Yeah.
only sold the movie rights to Disney but kept TV rights, and then the
Yeah.
sequel trilogy comes out and then he puts out Mandalorian. Like that would put pressure on Disney, don't you think? Like if that
Yeah.
scenario played out, like and George Lucas is over
Well,
here putting out Mandalorian and they're putting out the sequels, and one's
in
getting acclaim and the other's not.
do you know how much Don Bluth positioned himself as an animation giant in competition against his previous employer,
Yeah,
Walt Disney?
yeah.
And there was at one point the fact that Don Bluth Studios had been in development on an animated feature of Beauty and the Beast for several years. And then they
Mm,
canceled it and threw out the entire thing, even though there were a couple of scenes already animated, when they
mm.
found out that Disney Studios was making their own adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. So sometimes competition in the exact same marketplace will force the creatives to change their mind or to change direction on what they're producing. And that is
Interesting.
always interesting. That kind of
Yeah.
dynamism is always interesting. And I have to admit, I ironically, so ironically, speaking of Bluth and Disney, all of 20th Century Fox was recently purchased by Disney, and a lot of the 20th Century Fox library, including Anastasia, which was directed and animated by Don Bluth, and it was his most commercially successful film ever, was Anastasia, and now it's within the Mouse House and is now owned,
Oh, that's
ironically,
kind of
by
ironic.
Disney,
Yeah.
who he was in direct competition with for years.
Yeah.
So it's look, Don Bluth got into bed with Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg was like, I'm going to produce your films. Come on, Mr. Bluth, let's go. Let's make this work. And that competition between major creative forces within the world of feature animation is something that I'd like to draw as an analog to what we're about to see now
Mm,
between Warner Brothers and Prime Video being in direct competition with the same product in the marketplace. It's going to be very interesting to watch. Really, it
yeah.
will be.
Interesting is the
Yep.
most appropriate word, I think. I'm
Yeah.
excited because it means more Middle Earth projects, and like I said, you can't have good adaptations if adaptations aren't being made. So I'm
Right.
hoping that this spells some good, uh, ideally great adaptations in our future.
Hmm.
Justin, thanks so much for the super chat. My wife and I would like to show our gratitude for your level of storytelling and dedication. You've taken us from movie lovers to book enthusiasts. I
Oh,
love
hey,
it.
that's the best
Love hearing that.
compliment ever.
Right? I love hearing that. We love your videos and always get excited for a new one. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Justin. Well, we've got a fun one coming up on Saturday. It's on Narvi and the Doors of Durin. So be ready
Mm.
for that one. So again, folks, we'll have news as it comes out. Maybe we'll have
Yep.
some film announcements. Who knows when things are gonna get released. But yeah, if we get some more big news, we'll have another emergency podcast, another emergency live stream. Maybe we'll get Cliff to jump on again. But
Love that.
I think that's gonna do it for now. We've had a lot of good discussion on potential projects. If you're watching this after the fact, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what projects you're hoping to see come out of Warner Brothers / New Line now that they are getting back into the film game in Middle Earth. And Cliff, thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
Buddy, anytime. It is such a pleasure. Please, Warner Brothers, give us Glorfindel and the Scouring of the Shire and the Prince of Dol Amroth. And please give us
Angmar
lots and
War.
lots of Tom
Yep.
Bombadil. Please, Warner Brothers, please give us Tom Bombadil too, okay? And I want to have you come and join us on Torn Tuesday over at theonering.net. Matt, it would be our pleasure to have you come and
Absolutely.
crash our show anytime.
Absolutely. Sounds like fun. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for us. We've had a nice long stream. We'll see you
It's great.
guys next time here on Nerd of the Rings.